We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Hello, this is Tika Lark Fleming with MPC Presents the Black Girl Show. Today we have great guests. We have Isabelle and Carolyn, and we have a curator and a visual artist. But before we do our talk to our guest, we're going to do our Breaking the Table. And the Breaking the Table today is called Not Impressed. We on the left are not impressed with the inorganic American Apparel t-shirt wearing, bought and paid for 501(c)(3)s, gold star. Here's a picture of me eating with that person you elected. Let's over-focus on the cops thing. We see what you're doing. You're distracting us. Let's fire the cops. Let us talk about the cops. I do not agree with that. Let us fire who the cops work for, and that will fix all of this. I know many of you are like, that's not realistic. That's not a realistic goal. It's not a real expectation. And making the cops be nice with training and cameras, that's a realistic goal. I'm not sure if you're insincere or ignorant. I'm suspecting to believe that you're ignorant. Well, actually, probably insincere. How long have cops been killing people for no reason in the U.S.? Over 400 years. But this time it'll be different because of technology. But I get it. Keep your funding by not talking about the rich men who the cops work for. Keep your funding by not pointing at the politicians that pass local bills to violate people's rights and support corporations as people. Keep your funding and your dinner invites by just focusing on some high school graduate with a gun and no power except the power granted to him by the wealthy. Yes, we must pay attention to what the police are doing, but we must also know who the police are working for, and we must actually contact them and actually hold them also accountable. You know, the thing is, if we don't talk about the people who the cops work for, they're just going to replace the cops with another guy just like that. It's always easy doing work that isn't really the hard work. And I think that's what makes it so hard to listen to all of this. And the people are too tired to see your falseness. What happened to all of you during gang injunctions? We have a gang injunction in Los Angeles. We have a gang injunction in Inglewood. We have a gang injunction in Cleveland. We have the stop and frisk in New York that we just recently stopped. But what happened when all the people who are upset about Ferguson, all the people who are upset about Eric Garner, all the people who are upset about what happened in Cleveland, what exactly happened to you when we had the stop and frisk? And in certain neighborhoods in New York, almost every black man was stopped once or even twice. What happened to you then? What happened when the gang injunctions, when they actually put them out in Los Angeles, just specifically so that when people who moved here recently could feel safe? So they make it so that people who have been here can no longer walk around, because gang injunctions are just 3 people or more. You don't have to be in a gang. You just have to be 3 black men, 3 Latinos, and they can stop you and put you in a gang database. In Los Angeles, we need people challenging the system here. In New York, we need people challenging the system there. In Cleveland, we need people challenging the system there. And yes, I understand. We all want to talk about Ferguson, and that's great. We should all talk about that. But all politics is local. Politics is local. Politics is local. And that's pretty much what I want to remind you of for tonight. So that was it for Breaking the Table, and we'll be back with Isabelle.
Taisha Miller, I wrote you a song, and I still can't figure just what you did wrong. You were 19 years old with your whole life ahead, and with 23 bullets, 4 cops shot you dead.
Hello, we're back with Isabelle. Isabelle Lutterodt, and I am going to read her bio. She has an MA in Art, Museum, and Gallery Studies from University of Leicester. How do you say that? Leicester. Okay, Leicester. It's in the UK. An MFA in photography from C.O.L.A Arts. She's a curator and director of visual arts at Angel Gates Cultural Center in San Pedro, as well as an artist, which is so strange because every time I'm like, oh, she's an artist, and I keep, seeing your photographs. So I know you're not a recent transplant, but what's your favorite Los Angeles restaurant?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm not good with names, but there was a restaurant on Pico that I've been to several times, kind of in the Pico Union area. That is really, really yummy. But I really like diners, and I recently went to Pan's.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Pan's
and Pan's represents.
Yeah.
Pan's brings it. Another favorite restaurant is in kind of the Mar Vista area. I really like Finn.
Okay.
So those are kind of diverse.
You have a kind of a wide variety of. I always ask people about their coffee shops, but I'm like, no. Today I'm going to ask about restaurants. So I'm getting ideas. So what started you kind of on this art path?
Yeah. So when I went to undergrad, I decided I was very much geared towards being pre-med, and I decided, that's what I'm going to do. And when I got to undergraduate, I took a couple of art courses, and I thought, I think I found my voice. And photography, I saw photography as being sculptural, and I saw photography as being this way of really kind of moving through a lot of angst that I felt as a younger person. And it allowed me to express and explore ways of expressing that were really wonderful. And there are different artists like Lorna Simpson and Carrie Mae Weems who I gravitated towards. I felt what they were saying as artists and as Black women. And so I thought, wow, this may be it. My parents, on the other hand, were incredibly terrified to think that you could actually make a living as an artist, and what does that mean? And but it's kind of there have been a lot of people who have helped and who have guided, and I have had lots of support along the way in ways that I know and I don't know. So it's been a strange journey. It hasn't been a journey where things have landed in my lap, but I've worked hard to kind of pull things together, which has been it's part of the struggle of being an artist and trying to make it in a city like Los Angeles or any other city.
And you're not from Los Angeles, so no. How did you come about coming to Los Angeles?
When I was looking, I went to Howard. I was at Howard University for 2 years. I didn't graduate from Howard, but I was there as a undergraduate and then a graduate student. And when I was there, I thought, I'm missing something. And not that I was missing something from Howard, but I was missing something from an educational experience. And I thought, wow, maybe if I go to an art school, that will kind of give me the street cred that I need. And I started looking at different art schools, and I'd been to California before, and I thought, wow, it's kind of interesting out here or out there. And someone had given me the bit of advice: wherever you go to graduate school, you realize that's where you're going to stay for the next 5 years. And I thought, well, I thought of the different places I was applying. I'm like, do I really want to live there for 5 years? But I could see myself living in California, in Los Angeles. And so C.O.L.A Arts was the choice, and it proved to be a really interesting experience. I met some amazing people and had interesting experiences really trying to work through questions and problems as an artist. But in graduating from graduate school, and I think a lot of graduates can relate to this, I thought, wow, I don't know if I ever want to make work again, or this is going to be really tough, because you go through a certain rigorous process, and at the end of it, I felt completely depleted. And so I shifted my attention to thinking about what other things I could do. Luckily, I was working with a writer who was really who together we worked on projects, and that was really helpful to kind of keep motivated.
Well, you're also a curator, and
Yes.
that's kind of like how I know of you as a curator. And how did you go from artist to curator? I mean, I know you're still an artist, but how did that happen?
So at Cal Arts, I realized, because it's such a short program, it's 2 years and then you're done. And so at the end of the first year, I thought, we need a project, and we being the writer who I was working with and myself, I thought, we need a project that we can continue doing postgraduate school, because it's going to become really, it's like the shock. What do you do? And so I because of that, I thought, well, maybe, and how do we get shows? What is getting a show? Everyone was having a show in Germany. Like, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, let's make shows, and we'll have shows, and then we'll show our work. And isn't it easy?
Yeah, that's simple.
It's simple. And
Yeah.
so, but it turned out that the journey in working with this writer, the journey of looking at how to develop shows became really amazing, because we were interested in developing shows that spoke to a community, not just to other artists or other people who were well-versed in fill-in-the-blank theory. We wanted shows that our mothers would be interested in coming to and could get something out of, along with people who were coming from the art school arena. And so we started developing shows. Our first show was Ghetto Fabulous. It opened at the Watts Towers Art Center, and it opened at the Armory. And it was a kind of a really big kickoff that allowed us to think, wow, maybe we can do something with this. And then from there, we had a show that we curated at the California African American Museum called Through the Gates, which commemorated the 50th anniversary of Brown versus the Board of Education. And then we kind of curated a couple others. And from that, I thought, you know what? I think I want to go and really do this. I want to put together shows that speak to a community, or speak to communities, or create a space for communities to be in conversation with one another. And that's when I went off to the University of Leicester and came back. And
Why'd you decide to go to the UK to do that?
yeah, well, it's one of the oldest programs for museum studies, and it's also a program that I didn't want to go to a curatorial program, because I felt, well, I'm doing curation. I feel like I have that. But what would be interesting is understanding these larger issues of how do you engage a community, and bridging education and curation. And that's sort of the place I sit. I see myself as an educator, and I see myself as a curator. And I try, in the way I curate shows, I try and think of it from both of those standpoints, so that the space at Angel's Gate is really this hybrid space. They're participatory spaces. The labels have questions that encourage you as a viewer to really think of your space, of how you fit in the work, along with bringing in artwork by people in the community, artists in the community in San Pedro and also LA, who are really good at what they do and are able to tell really well-crafted stories. So, and the work I show is primarily narrative, which is my own bias, but I really like narrative-based work. And I think that when you're dealing with tough issues in a community, narrative-based work is one of the ways to begin to kind of delve in.
Well, people can understand what's going on.
Exactly. And it's not, there's an in for everyone, right?
Understanding doesn't mean it's a negative thing.
Exactly. And I think we're slowly getting to that place where maybe it isn't a negative thing. And one of the things that really warmed my heart was when someone said, "Oh, I'm so glad you're showing narrative-based work. That's great. It's not taboo anymore." And I'm like, "Oh, good. Okay, good. I'm glad that's there. That people want to see this." And so that's kind of how I fell into curation. And I didn't go to school thinking, "Oh, I want to be a curator," but it's kind of something that's come to me. And I worked with when I was at UCSD working. My boss was an artist as well, although he didn't make work anymore. He was now a curator. But it was interesting to see how he bridged that gap. And I think there are strengths for me that come to the position that I bring to the table in terms of being an artist and also being a curator. But I don't have the PhD in art history. Like, I don't have that pedagogy that a lot of people who are in the curatorial world have. Which which doesn't interest me, but also means I'm working from a very different space.
Well, it seems like to me that your work is very relatable, or what you put together with your shows are very relatable, which is kind of and it seems like to me from talking to you, it seems like that's what you want to do. Mm-hmm. It's not like, well, I'm trying to make this thing fit so that people can understand. It's like, this is what you do, which is kind of a rare thing. I'm just saying. It's a rare combination. You really don't get that much, because people are like, what I really want to do is direct, but and that's not something that you're doing. So what are some of your current favorite artists or curators?
I have some of them are curators, some of them are spaces. So I really like what Cesar Garcia is doing with the Mistake Room in downtown LA. It opened up maybe a year ago, and he has a really strong mission. He's a really great guy, and he's really committed to bringing new work into LA, particularly people of color. That's my sense. There's also Commonwealth and Council, which is located kind of in Koreatown, and it's run by artists as well, and it's a really great space doing really interesting programming. One of the curators who inspired me from the very beginning, her name is Tone Nielsen. She lives in Denmark, but she lived here for a bit, and folks may remember the show she curated at Lace called Democracy When.
Okay, yes. And
that opened up, I don't know, maybe 12 years ago, which was a fantastic show. And she's gone on to curate great shows out of Denmark. And then one of the museums that really kind of always blows my mind, or at least blew my mind a lot when I was younger, was the Hirshhorn Museum, and that's in DC. And I would go there. It's a donut museum, and you kind of just walk around the different floors. But I always felt I came out of there and I was in awe. And now, more so now than ever, because they've really put a lot of time into showing video-based work or time-based work. So it's changed the museum, which has been fantastic. But for me, that's sort of a museum I like going back to. It's like an old blanket that you kind of wrap yourself in. But artists who I like their work, I like a lot of different work, but I'm going to primarily speak of artists who are women, and predominantly women of color, because we don't get enough recognition or representation in the commercial gallery world. So I really love Audrey Chan. We're showing some of her work at Angel's Gate. I like Sandy Rodriguez. She's a painter, and she is an artist in residency in Art and Practice, which is in Lamerne Park, part of what Mark Bradford is doing. I love Colleen Smith. She's a filmmaker. She's based in Chicago. And then Weira Natasha Ogunji. She's an artist based in Austin, Texas, and Lagos, Nigeria. We're also showing some of her videos at Angel's Gate. And then I like Deanna Erdman. And she's a video / photographer, photo-based artist, and she's awesome. And we've shown her work at Angel's Gate too. All of these artists, except for Colleen, we've shown at Angel's Gate. But they're all doing really interesting work, and they're all invested in different types of media. And they're invested in a practice that in many ways is based in the communities that they live in.
And I think that's one question I wanted to ask you in regards to, you seem to care about the community, and you seem to care about women and people of color in regards to to what you do. I mean, kind of like, why is that? So why do you think that? Why is that important for you? Like, how is that? How'd that come about being? One
of the, besides being a woman of color, I think one of the things that I see in the museum world and in the gallery world is that there isn't a representation. There isn't enough, and I'm not the first person to say this. There isn't enough recognition. There isn't enough representation of women of color, particularly emerging talent. We just don't get represented by galleries. One of my friends who's an artist, she is represented, and I was like, well, how did you do it? She's like, I wrote to the gallery and I said, you should represent me. And I thought, right on. That's how you have to do it sometimes.
Yeah.
But that's not all. And she's an amazing artist, and she well and deservedly she's represented by this gallery. But for a lot of artists, it's just getting through that threshold and feeling like your work is strong enough, and getting past the insecurities to put it out there and to push forward and say, no, I need, this is important. You should represent me. And there's so many women of color who aren't represented. Of the women who I mentioned, I think Colleen is represented, but locally in Chicago, and I don't think any of the other ones are, and that's a travesty, and it's something that I feel passionate about because we don't live in the 1960s, we don't live in the 1950s, although sometimes it feels like that. We live in a time where, particularly in LA, this is a majority Latino community. Why is it so hard for people of color to get represented? Why is it so hard for people of color to get shows outside of the small pockets of small pockets that exist within the community? Why aren't there more shows at MoCA, LACMA, Hammer, and some of these other larger institutions? So
I find it fascinating that we don't have more, because there's so many Latinos that are visual artists, that are painters. You know, when you go to the East Side UCLA, it's like that's, you know, almost like what it's very part of the culture. You would think there'd be many more solo shows. It's like they're very underrepresented in regards to, like, Latinos are very underrepresented in the art world. In Los Angeles, it makes no sense. It's kind of insane.
It really is, and it's a travesty. And I remember I was working with an artist, Fabian Deborah, and we showed one of his pieces at Angels Gate, and he has a studio downtown, and I went to see it, and we were talking about MoCA and how Jeffrey Deitch was leaving and so forth, and he's like, you know, they had that show about graffiti artists, and no one from Boyle Heights was represented.
Yes, a lot of people were talking about that. A lot of people from Los Angeles were excluded from that show. And there's a certain arrogance that comes from putting up a show of graffiti work, and you don't even look at your home base right across the river. I mean, it was literally like right there.
Right there.
I just like look across the river. It was actually like, I mean, that was pretty amazing.
And if you don't know, there are people who could have told you where to go. You know what I mean? So it's like, and that is but that's not unique.
No.
And that's not unusual. That's the norm. That it's egregious because it's so obvious, but that's the norm on multiple different levels. And that's the part where that's where I see my role as, I see myself as being able to shift that and actively trying to do what I can to shift it within my small space, within the space that my small little circumference. Community is this vague thing, like what is a community? And community shifts. I use the word community a lot, but right now the way I define community, because of where I work, would be San Pedro, Wilmington, extending into Wilmington, and then the Harbor and South Bay region. And on different levels, I'm able to tap people in those different areas. Do I do a great job? There's always room for improvement, and I try my best to really engage as much as possible the San Pedro community, and now I'm beginning to look out to Wilmington as being a community I really want to work closely with.
Well, I'm glad you're not ignoring Wilmington and remembering that Wilmington is part of, because San Pedro, San Pedro is almost kind of very isolated in Los Angeles. It's kind of its own. You go to like Long Beach is more included than San Pedro, and then you have like Wilmington. I mean, how are you going about bringing them? I mean, do you just make it till it's a San Pedro thing, or do you try to bring them into Los Angeles, or what?
So it's funny that you say that, because I had this conversation with there's Hojas Tea Room, which is an amazing tea room in Wilmington, and the woman who started it is fantastic, and the tea is so addictive and so amazing. That's one thing. But the woman who started it is equally as amazing, and she's from Wilmington, and she started this tea room, and people must have said, how can you charge $5 for a tea? Who's going to buy it? she's opening up a new store in San Pedro.
Okay.
The business is good.
Okay.
And I think in order to enter a community, you need stakeholders. And in San Pedro, I feel like I've worked hard, and Angels Gate in general has worked hard to try and develop stakeholders. And I feel like I'm in a place where I have stakeholders who are kind of my guides in the community. And the current show we have up right now, which is tells the story of pile drivers from the Union 2375. They were my in into this incredible world of understanding the role of the worker, not just in general, but the role of the worker in the port. And they were stakeholders that took me on this journey of understanding the role of the worker and how important the worker is in maintaining and keeping our city moving the way it is. And so right now I feel like I'm in a place where I'm building up stakeholders. I'm at the very beginning of it in Wilmington, and I hope over the course of this year I'll be able to really develop longer and deeper relations with different stakeholders. In 2015, we're opening up a new exhibition that tells the story of that begins to tell the story. I say begin because it's a multifaceted, multidimensional story, but that begins to tell the story of veterans. And the whole year, next year, we're going to focus on the veteran and the military experience, looking at it from multiple different sides. So I met with a representative from Military's Families for Peace. I met with someone who's part of Veterans for Peace. I'm meeting with different people who are in that community who are based in the South Bay primarily. So that's part of the building up of a network, building up of people who can guide you through and introduce you to other people.
You're truly doing like public art. Like you're truly doing it the way it's supposed to be done. Like I never, it's weird. I didn't think it was truly possible a lot of times because you don't have people who know about art, or you have people who don't care about the community. So it's so nice to hear somebody who understands both sides and like brings it together. So that's a really refreshing type.
I'm trying. There are times when I feel like I'm like, oh yeah, I got this. And there are times where I'm like, ooh, I don't know, maybe I stepped in it. But the one thing this year has been such a learning curve, and I am incredibly grateful for the generosity and the support that the Union 2375 has given me, because I know I've made some mistakes, and they have been there, and they have, they're people who have helped to kind of guide me, and I tell them that a lot. I say, I know I've made mistakes, and I'm so thankful that you're here to guide me. And I think part of it is just being honest, and being as and know that your heart's in the right place as you try and kind of pull these different strings together to make an art thing happen. Oftentimes the thing that's hard when you're working with people who don't understand arts is to explain, like, this can actually be fun. Like, this is a good thing. But it helps when you're working with when you're able to partner with people who are equally as passionate and dedicated, and I feel like I am finding my way.
Okay. And is there any other events that are going on, or anything else that we should know about in regards to your space, or what you're doing, anything that you're doing that we should know about?
Well, Angels Gate has an opening that will happen February 8th from 2 to 5 it'll launch the veteran show. For me, I'm in Sandy Rodriguez and I started a collaborative called Studio 75, and we're looking at different types of public engagement work that we can do, and so we're going to hopefully launch a few things next year. For me and my own work, I'm hoping that I'll be able to show a few more things this year. I had a show that just closed at the Redlands, University of Redlands, and that was really exciting. I haven't really made a lot of work in a long time, and so that was really great to do it. And I'm looking for other opportunities to be able to show it. So we'll see. Stay tuned on that one.
Oh, well, that is excellent. We're going to actually put everything from Angel City and all the other great things you were talking about. I'm also going to put down that university that you went to.
Leicester.
Leicester. Because I'm like, oh, this is interesting, and I'm afraid if we're going to end up losing you, we're going to leave you from another country. That's what I think is going to happen. We keep talking about Denmark and the UK. So thank you so much, Isabelle. I appreciate you coming here, and I hope we can talk to you again about, especially your Veterans Project. We can bring you back in February.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah. This is MPC presents the Black Girl Show, and we'll be back in a moment.
Shit, it's time to rise. Life full of maggots, niggas and flies. Trash, ash, and cash. Where does the truth lie? As the youth cries, hate subsides. The planet is terrorized, leaving no place to hide from that third eye.
Downward.
God is a mirror in the sky. Color outside the lines. All in time, all this time in the mind. Unfulfilled ambition, broken ladders to climb. Red wine, white lines, blue collar crime, stars got us blind. Nation on a decline, flat line, your life.
Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. You're tuned in to LA Talk Live, where we're more than just talking.
It started out like a totally normal day.
I love you.
I mean, I guess I was a little sweaty and I was definitely sore. I thought I had gas. Turns out I was having a heart attack. Heart disease is the #1 killer of American women. So now I take care of myself and tell the other women in my life to do the same. Make it your mission to save your life and the lives of the women you love. Find out more from the American Heart Association at goredforwomen.org.
Hello world, how you living? This is D. Brex, your host of the all-new rap project here on LA Talk Live. That's latalklive.com, or you can find me on iTunes Radio in the R&B section. That's the rap project every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's Wednesdays at 7 p.m. West Coast time, so don't be late. On the rap project, I will be playing the very best of rap and hip-hop that goes beyond the ordinary. So connect with me, your host, D. Brex, the rap connoisseur, on the Rap Project every Wednesday at 7, right here on latalklive.com, where we are more than just talk.
Hi, this is Dick and Sharon, inviting you to join us every Monday at 3 Pacific for LA Progressive Live.
Join us as we cover the progressive landscape both locally and across the nation.
So don't forget to tune in to LA Progressive Live every Monday at 3 Pacific.
Exclusively on latalklive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B, Radio Flag, TuneIn Radio, Live 365, AHA Radio, TiVo Radio, and Apple TV Radio.
Or just watch and listen directly at latalklive.com and LA Progressive Live. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening and viewing pleasure.
This is LA Talk Live and LA Progressive Live. We are more than just talk.
Peace and love. This is Eddie Lamons, the fastest man in LA, inviting you to my new show, Super Force Radio, the urban lounge and internet radio TV. That's every Friday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. That's Super Force Radio, baby, informing the globe and empowering the people while playing the tightest songs in the universe, exclusively on latalklive.com and the Talk Live Broadcast Network. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B, TuneIn Radio, Live 365, Radio Flag and AHA Radio, or watch and listen directly at latalklive.com. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening and viewing pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hey y'all,
I'm Shaquem Williams, and I'm the host of The Shock Factor here on LA Talk Live. We broadcast to the world every Friday at 8 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Live music, live performances. We're just live. Chef Momo, and once again, your host, Shaquem Williams. Thank you. So come join every Friday here at LA Talk Live, the world-leading broadcasting internet radio station. The Shock.
This is Brett Chapin.
And this is Dorothy Dillingham Blue, inviting you to join us every Saturday at noon Pacific Standard Time for our show, La La Land Talk.
Join us as we talk with some of the top talent in LA. Artists' untold stories, your phone calls, and live on-location broadcasts have made La La Land one of the best sources in LA for everything entertainment.
So don't forget to tune in to La La Land Talk.
Exclusively on LATalkLive.com.
You can also catch us on iTunes Radio, R&B, Live 365, Radio Flag, and now Stitcher Radio. Or watch and listen directly at LATalkLive.com.
Saturdays at noon Pacific Time. Find us on Facebook at Facebook.com/LaLaLandTalk, Twitter, Twitter.com/LaLaLandTalk. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live.
And we are more than just talk.
I should have stayed at margins where the people are friendly, where the music is warm and the beer is cold.
Hello, we're back with MPC presents the Black Girl Show, and we have Carolyn up next. But before, I would like to give a little announcement. On March 7th, 2015, we're going to be having the Black Girl Book Fair. So I hope you all can participate in that. If you are a bookseller or a publisher or an artist, we're looking for you to be part of the show. So right now I'm going to read Carolyn's bio. Carolyn Castaño is a Los Angeles-based artist whose recent body of work, entitled Narco Venus, explores the role of women in the male-dominated culture of narco-trafficking. She is a 2011 California Community Foundation Getty Fellow and the recipient of the prestigious C.O.L.A Individual Artist Fellowship in 2011. Her work has been featured at LACMA, Phantom Sightings, Art After Chicano Movement, which traveled to the Museum del Barrio in New York City, and the Museo del Arte Contemporáneo Rufino, I am messing this up so horribly bad, in Mexico City, amongst other venues. She's been featured in several group shows, including LA Now, Emerging Artists. You've been everywhere. You've done a lot of things. You know, the thing is that I always want Carolyn to have? I always want to go to Carolyn's solo show, because I feel like your work is, I don't feel like every time I go to a group show that you're part of, I always go, she should have her own show. Why is she here with these people? No, I was kidding. I shouldn't say that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So why did you decide to become a visual artist or painter?
Wow. Well, that was a long time ago now. I think I was always attracted to, I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I still don't, but I was always attracted to creative things. I was interested in fashion and music. I was kind of a new wave post-punk, mid-punk, punk rocker. And I took some art classes, and I decided that I loved art, and I fell in love with the stories of the artists and with painting. And I just I created a portfolio, and I applied to 2 schools, Cal Arts and the San Francisco Art Institute, and I got in. And I decided to go to San Francisco because I wanted to live in another place, and San Francisco was at that time so romantic, and I just did it. I was kind of scary. I asked my parents, am I doing the right thing? They're like, do whatever you want, mija. And I'm like, that's not what I want to hear. I want you to tell me no. But they said, no, follow what you want. I'm like, okay, see ya.
So you just left and you just went. So, who are your influences in regards to being an artist? Who are the people that you admire? I mean, do you have, are your influences, are they actual artists, or are they, the political events? Because your art's kind of political, sort of. Mm-hmm. So, not actually sort of, it actually is political. So what really influences you? Like which painters, what?
I'm I don't know. I'm kind of a mixed bag because I'm a trained painter. I'm very interested in painting. I'm influenced by, I love Matisse. I love his colors. I love the work of Chrysophilia. If we're looking at some of the bigger names. I studied under Larry Pittman, who, it's one of the reasons why I came back to LA from San Francisco and went to UCLA. I wanted to work with Larry. But also as, I've always been very political and in, for the maybe past 10 years, my work became much more politically driven and I found, that I was missing sort of my work and what I was thinking were not really gelling, or the issues that I was concerned about. And so I started making work about women who've been involved, or I sort of call them adjacents, involved in the narco-trafficking narrative, but adjacent to as girlfriends, lovers, mothers, or then more seriously involved as traffickers themselves, drug queenpins or mules. And I just became very interested in the story and how these women would get wrapped up in this kind of it's very male-dominated, very macho culture, and the rest is history.
No, it's like this weird combination because it's political, but it's beautiful. Like, your work's very beautiful, and it's kind of strange to call something, because it's such a hard world that you are painting about, but yet you do it in this beautiful way. I mean, is that kind of part of it, kind of to help people look at it so they can see the...
Yeah, I guess I know I've always been attracted to the bling and to beauty, and I think that's also why I was attracted to these stories of these women, because they're very beautiful. They're kind of trophy wives or girlfriends, and the world that not the positive side, but the world that's part of that narco culture, that I think what drew them in is this kind of the money, the luxury.
The same reason you went into painting, right?
Right, exactly. The loft living, the convertibles. And so I find there's a relationship there now. And so I want to make, in my paintings, the language of the painting kind of speak to elements of that lifestyle that also draw, what drew them in, draws the viewer in to see them. So I don't know if I'm being successful, but
have you ever worried that it might attract the attention? Like, you're drawing, if you're painting people who are involved in a kind of that they're still involved in these kind of underworld activities. Do you ever get worried that they're like, oh, maybe it might be a good thing if they kind of decided that your work was something that was that they liked. Yeah, it's definitely crossed my mind where I think, do I really want to be painting, about these people, and what if, my work is online and my name, and I've worried that what if somebody, just they don't like it, or it just pisses off the wrong person, and they show up at my house or at my school where I teach. And I had a funny incident like 2 years ago where I had a student where I teach at Long Beach City College come into my classroom, and he was tattooed from head to toe. He had full facial tattoos. He looked very scary, and he walked straight up to me and he's like, "Excuse me, are you the teacher?" And I said, "Yes." And I'm like, "Oh shit, this is it." They're gonna gun me down in my classroom for painting, narco heads. And he's like, "I want to take art." And he went into this whole story about how he's changing his life and he's going to have his tattoos removed. I'm like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "Can I paint you?" Before, modern times, the political person, the social criminal, the political criminal, the artist, we all hung out together. We were all one big happy family. And then somehow that kind of changed, and it almost seems like we're kind of almost being pushed back, owing to the economy, to that life again, where we should actually be teaming up with them,
right,
as a side gig. I was talking about this with Isabelle. Latinos seem very underrepresented in art in Los Angeles. I mean, of every group of people that you're kind of like, okay, while people of color in general are underrepresented in art, it seems like Latinos are extremely represented just because of the amount of work amount of artists that are in the Latino community. I mean, is it challenging being a Latina and an artist in Los Angeles?
It's okay, Tika. You can say Latino. Well, it's complex, and you're right. For the amount of Latinos that are in this city and this state, and the amount of artists, we are vastly underrepresented. There are Latinos. I mean, there's many different art worlds.
Yes.
You know, there's the higher blue chip or higher up art worlds. There's, lowbrow art. There's the Chicano art world, and somehow they don't really speak to one another. There are Latinos in I think that I don't know if calling it the Chicano art but we'll call it that. The Chicano art scene is very thriving, and the people are exhibiting, but it's like we're exhibiting to each other. There's somehow a disconnect between some of those artists, not all, making the leap to the, let's say, the Hammer Museum or LACMA. Not that it doesn't happen, but it does. And, I feel lucky that I have shown in different venues that have had some attention, but I do feel like there is this kind of ceiling. Like, I'm like, hello, I'm up here. Like, can I break through? I've gone to school with all y'all, but somehow I'm not always invited to that party. And, I feel like it's a little tacky to complain, like, well, blah, blah, blah. But it is kind of funny that there's so many artists, and the numbers that are in this kind of higher up conversations are so little. And I don't know what's happening. What the disconnect is, but I also do know, as somebody finally pointed out loud, Chris Rock, God bless him, that the Latinos are the slaves of Hollywood, and I feel like Latinos are the maids and the gardeners, predominantly, in this point in the timeline. And so I think that there's a disconnect between, like, these are the people who do the cleaning, and these people also have talent and have things to say and are worthy to be recognized. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, because there's such a vibrant scene on the East Side in regards to people having their own galleries and showing their own stuff. I mean, do you think at some point maybe someone will, maybe in Boyle Heights or East LA, create their own museum and end up, supplanting LACMA, and just kind of like, okay, well, fine, you don't want to show us, we're gonna have our own thing. And then, I mean, do you think that could happen? I mean, do you think it's, that's a kind of a crazy...
I don't think it's going to happen. It could happen. I mean, there are certainly, some Latino or Mexican American, Chicano power brokers out there that could make something like that happen. And instead of being from the position of the underdog or the claim, give us something, instead of asking, being like, well, we're going to create our own thing, and then people come and enjoy it too. And participate in it, instead of asking to be included at the dinner, just being like, well, we're going to have our own party and it's going to be great. So I don't know, we could talk to some of Armando Duron or Cheech Marin, or I mean, there's many, there's others. It's just about having, are they interested in art, having them create it.
Well, let's go back to what, you have a show going on in San Diego, and you want to tell us a little bit about that show, what's going on with that? Sure.
I'm very excited. It's at a new old place called the New Americans Museum. I think the old title of name of the museum was the New Americans Immigrant Museum. And it was founded by this woman, Deborah Sheckley, and they were opened in 2008, but because of the economy and issues, they had to close. And so they're reopening in January with myself and a collection of tapestries made by women in Colombia from the 1960s through the 1980s that are part of Deborah Sheckley's collection. They found me, I guess, through maybe they knew my work and online, and asked me after several studio visits if I wanted to have a show there. And the work I'm showing is called Mujeres que Crean, Women Who Create, and it's has been like 3 years in the making, and it's based on 3 years ago I did a residency in Medellin, Colombia, where I worked with a group of women from a nonprofit called Mujeres que Crean, Women Who Create, and the nonprofit works with Colombian women who are survivors of the armed conflict, who've been suffered through sexual violence, have been kicked out of or displaced from their towns and villages in more remote areas of Colombia, where there are guerrillas fighting with the Colombian army and paramilitary. And so I worked with the women to create a video where they recreated poses from art historical representations of women, and I filmed them on a green screen in Colombia, and brought the video back and have been editing it with an editor and myself. But also the part that's taken the longest is the women drew flowers and birds that are native to Colombia. And my idea was that the birds and the flowers would be animated in the video and interact with them in their poses and such. And so that's the piece. But I wanted to link this kind of the human sort of cost of the war and the human toil and the displacement of women and families, but also the environmental impact that these conflicts have on the flora and the fauna. And Colombia being one of the top 5 biodiverse countries in the world, there's no lack of water there, birds, animals. It's crazy, but it's also they're all located where these conflicts happen. And so it's really what I want to paint. Shh, don't tell anyone. So the show is going to be this video with the women, an interviews that I did with the women, and then also drawings that are actually going to be shown in light boxes, and they're going to have this kind of stained glass effect, and a curtain that I'm having made that's printed with a drawing of the Magdalena River Valley, which is the main artery in Colombia that a lot of these women live in towns that are off of this river. So,
and I noticed that a lot of your work has women as the kind of the central character. Is there a reason for that? Just because are you showcasing to kind of let the world know what is going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm interested in women's stories and women's lives, and representing, so many, the world is dominated by men and by the male narrative, and the war is predominantly, created by men. And so I'm been interested in the other side of it, and the other side, which is often women. And in these stories of these women from Colombia, they're really, they call themselves survivors of the armed conflict, but I see them as very triumphant. They're survivors, but they're also triumphantly alive and carrying on. And if you come to see the show, during the interviews, you really get a sense of who they are and how they've managed to keep living despite these horrible losses of their husbands, their sons, violence portrayed against them and their children. So
that's you bring about, so you show stories that people have not seen, and I think and you show it in venue that people aren't used to seeing it in. And I think that's one of like the strengths of your work. It's letting people know what is going on, but it's kind of in a place that you don't expect to see it. Like, oh, you're not expecting to see that in an art gallery. And just not someone who has as skilled as you are in regards to your painting. So that's, that's the service, that's the thing you bring for me in regards to, that's why I love your work. And when I always see it, I'm like, oh, that's Carolyn. Carolyn. I always know who you are. Like, some painters, you don't know who they are, but your work, you always know who you are. Well, I know also you have a t-shirt business. Ooh. So I want you to talk about your t-shirt, because well, why not? It's good. I want you to talk about because you did that, and I think that's interesting. Tell me about it.
Well, I have a t-shirt business, is a huge word, but with my partner Gary Dauphin. It's the t-shirts. It's t-shirts and other printed material. So far, we've had a series of t-shirts, and they're inspired by soccer players from the last 2 World Cups, and they feature my drawings and a kind of text that is specific to the soccer player. And I worked with Gary, and we really picked soccer players who play with identity, play with politics in their persona as soccer players, or maybe an element of their biography, and became really interested in the way like soccer or football really engages in so many different levels than other sports. It's very political. Soccer players' lives, their race really plays into the whole dynamic in soccer. And so like one soccer player that we featured this last World Cup is Mario Balotelli, who's an Italian footballer who's, I believe, Ghanaian, of Ghanaian descent, but he's Ghanaian, but he was adopted as a child by a white Italian woman who's his mama, and he's their star football player, but the Europeans are notoriously racist, and they taunt the black players. And such, and so if he like scores, fouls up the ball, they'll taunt him and jeer at him, and so he's been seen like crying after a game, or if they lose, he's crying. So we've made shirts about Mario. One of the shirts we made is Nero Italiano, which is black Italian. He's like, I'm Italian, but I'm also black, and what else? Yeah, but so that's the t-shirt business, but I'm hoping to, expand from just soccer and have more of my drawings, maybe invite artists to do kind of a printing residency with to come to my studio and print their own design, and have a kind of like an edition, the way a fine art print studio would have an edition of silkscreen or etchings. We would have an edition of t-shirts. So Tika, I'm talking to you. I like the mic.
No, but thank you so much, Carolyn. Thank you for coming on the show and telling us about. And what's the name of your business? I'm sorry, your teacher.
Oh, it's called Carga 1804.
You're awful salesperson.
I'm sorry. See, this is why
you're such a painter.
Yeah.
Well, that was the end of the Black Girl Show. Thank you guys all for joining us, and we will talk to you next week, which will be our last show until we start doing our shows on Saturdays. So this is Tika Lark-Fleming with MPC Presents the Black Girl Show, and thank you, Richard Carr, our engineer, for engineering our show.
Sugar cane, and when I kick my legs, I got real bomb. My great grandpa was a blues lover. He be rocking his moonshine to Baby King and Jimmy Ray. Rock on that. And that's why they say I'm different. And that's why they say I'm strange.
know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and hosts of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.